Hello and welcome to part two of our three-part TechBytes series, Mobility in the Age of Big Data, Analytics, Data, and Devices, presented by Slashdot and sponsored by Panasonic. Today, part two, Deploying Rugged Devices to Ensure a Reliable Experience for the Mobile Worker. I'm Michael Krieger, and according to CIO Insight, 85% of CIOs are seeing IT requirements increase significantly, including more support needed for mobile devices that can interact with enterprise apps. With the focus shifting to the employee experience, how do you deliver on all the elements, including connectivity, performance, communications, and collaboration? Well, here to discuss that with me today, once again, is Jim Dempsey, National Sales Manager from Panasonic. Jim, thanks for joining me.
Yeah, glad to be here. Thanks for having us.
So, Jim, as businesses increasingly rely on data, analytics and big data projects included, to make smart business decisions, how important are end user devices in the big picture?
Yeah, really, if you look at the whatever you want to call the Internet of Things and edge computing and all that, really it's where we spend our time as obviously Panasonic is at the edge, right? So all the data that in the world is great, but it has to be collected at some level. So it's typically collected at the edge and other various places throughout the enterprise. So it could either be machine-to-machine type activity or the actual workers that are out in the field collecting that data. So, the critical piece is at the edge there. How do you implement a system that allows you to access that data? Because again, if I could have all the analytics in the world, but if I can't share that with where the work is actually happening, and hopefully getting to a proactive mode where I'm reacting, my system is reacting autonomously, if you will, to input coming in from, say, a machine calls in and says, hey, I have a drive that's degrading and I need someone to get out here. Someone should be dispatched, ASAP before the device actually goes down or the system goes down. Those types of activities happen because of the input that's coming from the outside. So the edge devices that our customers are looking at is really kind of fitting into a couple different categories. Instead of a one size fits all, they're looking for really a purpose-built, use case decision. So instead of everybody gets a laptop, now I can deploy a handheld tablet, a laptop even, to the appropriate worker for the job that they're going to be doing. So now that worker, now enabled with a device that's at the edge, that's capable of certainly using the very robust 4G networks that we have today, can access data, they can create data, share data in a variety of different formats. So it's not just keypad input. You're seeing voice, you're seeing full streaming video being taken advantage of. So again, a lot of work goes into building data analytics engines, but the critical piece is that's all well and good, but making sure that you have the appropriate edge computing environment set up is critical. And then at that level, you start looking at a lot of different things that IT has to think about, right? How are people accessing the network? How are we securing the network? How are we managing application or OS upgrades, application updates, patches, antivirus, all those types of things. Again, core traditional IT roles, but made much more complex now because we have many more devices on the edge, multiple operating systems, multiple different types of form factors. So really, when we talk to our customers, we really start looking at what are the requirements of the worker, and then what technologies can we apply to that worker to allow them to do their job more efficiently, and to allow IT to really integrate those platforms into their overall strategy.
So that's a good point. Given that there's a growth in mobility for workers that keeps going, how are the evolving user demands impacting the way the mobile devices themselves change?
Yeah, it's interesting because I think as we looked at the demographic shift going on in the workforces, and it's across all industries. It's really not unique to any one industry. You're seeing it across the board. As the baby boomers are starting to become, the smaller part of the workforce, as the newer employees are coming in that are very versed in technology, they're really putting a push on the IT department. Where in the old model, IT used to bring technology to the worker, and here's what you get, and here's how you do it, and that's how things work. Now the users are coming, and the business units, quite frankly, are also coming to the IT department to say, hey, we want to better serve our customers, and there's this cool technology over here that we think would be a good opportunity for us to improve service or improve operations, reduce costs, whatever. They're typically going to look in one of those buckets for the ROI for why we do this project. So IT, with all the stuff they have to do anyway, right, that they've normally been doing, are now tasked with this next level where they're working with several different operating systems, several different form factors, and trying to assimilate that in and trying to serve not only their customer, IT's customers, obviously the business units that the company operates, but in a grander scheme of things, it's the end user customer that company does business with. So it's almost a two-layered customer approach to the IT department these days. But a lot of technology is being brought to them. You look at the voice technologies. Everyone's using Siri, Cortana, Google Voice these days. People expect that should be built into various things they're now using in the corporate world. Visual technologies, where there's something like we're doing right now, a remote expert, right? Being able to access information or a remote agent, right, that I want to access. And then certainly the machine to machine comes into that as well. And augmented reality is another level that we're just seeing starting to come on the scene right now at the end user level. When you look at kind of virtual reality and all those technologies that are starting to be, again, brought into the company, typically by the workers as well as customers and or business units, again, putting that pressure on the IT department to have to sort through it all and then come up with a strategy to manage it all.
I have to laugh when talking about the voice activation of so many things. I saw the Batman Lego movie recently, and the voice of the computer in the Batcave, the credit given on screen was to Siri.
Yeah.
So, one of the things I see as a big factor is the fact that, yes, our millennial workforce like the touch screens, they like all that stuff, but across the board, it seems like we all have at least 2 or 3 devices. That's got to put pressure on IT as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something which back in the, a couple of years ago, maybe 10 years ago, the trend was, hey, let's get away from the bat. We call it the Batman. They're the bat belt, right? I've got all these devices. I've got a laptop. I've got a tablet. I've got a handheld. I've got a cell phone. How do I get it all down to one? So the nirvana was, how can we get everyone down to one? And in theory, that sounds like a great idea, right? Because now I have one device instead of multiple, but that creates that single point of failure. So if in some industries, maybe not as big an issue as others, but certainly in say utility industry where there's been a storm, power's out, and that power is taking, is certainly feeding hospitals and other types of infrastructure type of companies that impact people's lives. So how, as quickly as the utilities can get their folks out there to do the work, if they go out there and the device isn't working, then they don't have access to the system. So that becomes a challenge for them. But yeah, the workers, the younger workers again are much more used to this newer technology. And again, it's interesting how it's being integrated into the corporate environments these days. And again, like I mentioned earlier, it creates a lot of opportunity and complexity, I guess I should say, for companies and IT departments as they deploy those technologies.
So, Jim, what can IT departments do to ensure their mobile workers do have a reliable mobile experience?
Yep. So one of the things that obviously our value proposition is that we are an enterprise company. We are not in the business of making consumer grade devices because we understand the needs of the IT department as well as the business are different than say a user sitting on their couch, watching YouTube videos on a tablet. Completely different types of environments. So the typical things that we'll look at and talk to customers about are and Gartner Group, I think back in the 80s, I think, came up with the first TCO models of computing and talking about that the smallest part of the ownership of a piece of technology is actually the acquisition price. But that seems to get 90% of the attention of the purchasing departments and the business unit owners who are creating budgets for technology and deployments. So really, it's when we look at how we deploy our products, we spend a lot of time working on what I would call the soft side of the equation of TCO. It's can we make the devices easy to work with for the IT department? Can we make them compatible with existing legacy systems, but also with newer systems? Can we support multiple types of data capture technologies? Can we support multiple types of security, right? And data security, encryption, and other types of things. So the things that are necessary for a device to be able to exist within a corporate environment. A lot of consumer devices, like I mentioned, aren't built that way, and it creates a lot of extra work for the IT department because they have to create the layers, this layered approach, right, to how they put their devices out and manage them. Whereas when you look at enterprise class technologies, which we bring, we try and help the IT department by making sure that many of the things that they expect to have and have used to been having in their environment are compatible or work with our devices, and our devices are enabled in those types of environments.
So let's talk about the three C's: connectivity, communications, and collaboration. How do they impact workers who are using rugged mobile devices?
Yeah, so the networks, obviously we talked about, are gotten much better, 4G and 5G coming, so it allows a lot of opportunity for collaboration between employees, employees and data. So I may be implementing or collecting some data on one end of the network, and I could have a coworker on the other side of the network accessing that data in real time. So it enables real time data for the workers. But when you start looking at the remote assistants and remote experts and those types of technologies, where say, again, the utility environment, I may be a newer employee and I get rolled out to a job site, it's a critical job. We got to get it done on the first shot, first visit. And I get there and I've never worked with this piece of equipment before, or maybe I'm not as familiar with it. I just got trained on it. I can initiate a video chat or a remote expert call back to my home office. So just like you and I are doing right now, you could be my senior tech who's saying, hey, turn the camera around and okay, here's what you do. I know that unit, do this here, do that there, and talk me through that. So it allows a lot more collaboration at the point of activity for workers. It could be a one-to-one or one-to-many. So there's training videos and other things that are more canned that companies can have. So if I, again, can't get maybe that remote expert on the line with me, maybe I can access a streaming video of a repair, a video that we've done of the repair on that unit. So again, and then the communications, push-to-talk type technology, which has been used kind of walkie-talkies for years now. With a lot of these new enterprise devices, we can initiate a one-to-one, one-to-many voice communication on top of the video connection that these employees can have to better work together, as they're out in the field.
So what are some other ways that we can improve the customer experiences using rugged mobile devices?
Yeah, I think, in service, certainly I'll kind of talk maybe from the service organizations, because in a field service world, you're really touching the end user customers. And, particularly if you're going to, you're a security company going out to a customer's house, or if you're going to, say, fix a washer dryer and things like that. Those customers are expecting, that the workers today, the companies that they deal with, are technology, savvy, right? If the worker shows up with just a clipboard and a pen and paper, maybe not the best image or most avant-garde image, right? That you're presenting to the customer, particularly if you're there to fix something that's got it in itself, like a processor. Today, all the washing machines, refrigerators, almost anything that you have in your house is smart. So the customer would expect that if I'm showing up on site to do repair, I've got a device that I'm using that may be interfacing with their washer, dryer, or refrigerator, downloading fault codes or uploading new firmware, those types of things. So there's an expectation at the customer level that's there. And, even just the simple matter of being able to email them a receipt, the days of printing receipts are kind of, maybe going the way of this email, where it's for customers that are used to interacting in electronic fashion. Hey, just go ahead and email me my receipt, and I'll take care of it that way. Or I'll put a signature on your screen, right, signing off on the work order. Or maybe they can take a mobile payment right then and there with a mobile device for the customer. So from a customer perspective, they're as well putting a lot of pressure, I think, on service organizations to make sure that, again, the technology that they're bringing, certainly if I'm taking payment at a customer site, that better be secure. And the customer's expectation is that it is secure. And again, looking at classes of devices, enterprise class devices are much more suited for those types of environments where they have to be, the data's got to be protected. It has to be survivable, right? So it doesn't break after the second call, and then the rest of my day is spent, just capturing everything on paper. So enterprise class devices have kind of all that built in. I think from a customer perspective, it adds another level of customer service and just how that customer is viewing the company they're doing business with, that they are up on technology and investing, right, in them as customers, but also the employees that are out there working in the field.
So, Jim, when I think ruggedized, I think auto mechanic, delivery driver, service tech. Give me some use cases that have emerged that would surprise our viewers.
Sure. Yeah, we were actually, in fact, we were out at a retailer not too long ago, department store, and you think, okay, it's a department store. It's not outside. There's no sun. There's no snow. There's no 200 150 degree temperatures going on. But it was interesting. As we were talking with this particular retailer, they said we've tried all the consumer devices, and yeah, back in the day when the carriers were kind of giving them away, we got them with free activation, almost free with the activation. We didn't really use the 4G because we were inside, but we got the device for free. Maybe they just did Wi-Fi only devices, but they tried, and they came up with a thing they called retail rugged. They said you would be amazed the damage that our employees will do within an environment like this, to our devices. So, they may not be a candidate for the same type of technology that I'm going to use on an oil pipeline. Certainly, that's a much more rugged environment, but there's a middle ground. So you have kind of call it the oil pipeline environment on the right side, and you've got the kind of very kind of consumer side of things sitting on your couch, not really moving around on the other side. And this retailer said, I need something that's kind of in between. So when we look at our technology, we have certainly technology that goes from the super rugged oil field type class to what we call semi-rugged, which is kind of this retail rugged environment where we can kind of, again, bring enterprise class technology, to the retailer, but in a form factor and package that is more suitable for that environment. But that was certainly one that we were quite surprised when we went in and had that conversation. We were again, you're wondering if we were the right fit for that type of an opportunity, but it turns out, they liked our technology, particularly the fact that it integrated into their backend systems very well and protected their data. Being a retailer, they were very concerned about that. But I always keep that retail rugged in my mind as a use case that we really didn't think about, but kind of surprised us when we went through that meeting.
I guess you think about it, all these teenagers who often work in retail who are a little bit careless with somebody else's technology. That's not a total surprise. And with that, thanks, Jim. That's all the time we have for this segment. I want to thank you all for watching. Be sure to check out the additional resources for parts 1 and 3 of this TechBytes series: data analytics and mobile user, and managing enterprise mobility, in-house versus managed services. You'll also find some additional resources: an executive perspective, how disruptive handheld solutions help the logistics industry, a case study from the Alameda County Sheriff's Office, their experiences reducing failure rates and increasing connectivity, and not just for manufacturing, why hyperconnectivity is relevant to every industry. You'll find that all in the resources section of the console. Thanks again to Panasonic for making this TechBytes series possible. For Slashdot Media, this is Michael Krieger.